Why do 25% of change efforts succeed versus the 75% of change efforts that fail? Over 20 years now, 4 rounds of research, we have really cracked the code of how to lead change successfully. It's called our Change Vitality Cone, and it all starts with your inner state. It all starts with your own capability to be present to what is here, to be non-judgmental about whatever's coming up for you right now. You might be in a meeting, I've been in them, and I feel a bit rattled or frustrated. But the key thing here is that leaders who are able to spot the thoughts and feelings that are going on in you, hold them in a curious way. Why am I feeling rattled? Or why am I suddenly feeling a bit frustrated here? What's that saying about the system around me? So it's very important data. Your inner world has such rich data because it gives you clues as to what's going on around you too. So being present, being curious, and really intentionally responding to whatever shows up in experience. You can't always control what happens to you, but great change leaders are able to control their response to, in particular, difficulty and disturbance. And once they do that, other people around them can also change their response and shift their routines. But it does take you a certain way of approaching your inner world such that you can really take the outer world to a different place. So this, the quality of your inner state, it's why it's the pivot on the cone. And what we found, and we have this expression being before doing, it's very hard to learn the skills of how do you do change well if you haven't already mastered these inner capacities that we work with in our work with our clients in leading change.
I've come to learn the value of being much more self-aware and recognizing how you need to be in the context of leading change.
One of the best pieces of advice I was given, I think, around systemic leadership is when you're judging, you lost your systemic lens. When am I judging? When am I hearing judgment? And that's a real indicator of something that's a bit out of balance, and definitely that I've lost my systemic lens.
I've heard it also said that when you are judging, you stop exploring. And once you've stopped exploring, you can't lead change because it's a fixed world then.
The contemplation is a discipline which perhaps at first sight doesn't appear to have much to do with leadership, but actually has everything to do with discerning direction.
There's a strong emotional side to me that I'm not always comfortable in sharing that with others. And this program has shown me that these emotions that are there in the background are not just something to push away, but are something that are data to use for the good.
It's a change journey as much within yourself, and you don't realize that going in, but it's a very personal journey as well as a very external journey for the organization.
So my next round of research, and this is the green layer of the Change Vitality Cone, is what we call external practices. What do leaders personally have to do to lead change well? And what we discovered here, compared to a leadership style that is more shaping or leader-centric, where you're trying to personally command the change all the time and be the center of the gravity, there are 4 practices we call attractor. How do you create a solid purpose and positive meaning? Why does this change matter to people? Why does it matter to you? Edge and tension. How do you create disturbance in a change process and name reality, however awkward that might be? So people who can talk straight, spot the unhelpful routines, is what we mean by edge and tension. But also you have to make it psychologically safe. Change will stir up all kinds of emotions in yourself as well as other people. And of course, your emotions as a leader are contagious across the organization. So we have this 3rd leadership practice called container. And containment is all about how can you be calm, assured, and confident, even if there's going to be some edge and tension and difficult things to address. Do you do it in a way where people feel that you have confidence and that you are sure that the direction you're going into is the right one? And then the final thing you have to do to lead change well is what we call transforming space. And that is basically changing the now. I was speaking earlier about how when you work with Still Moving, it's highly likely that we will work with you in a way where the actual encounter, the dialogue, the conversation will be a transformational one. So transforming space are leaders who are able to, in the moment, shift the behaviour, shift the discourse. So for example, if you're in a meeting talking about innovation, and yet the conversation feels very sluggish, or you keep coming up with the old solutions, or you're not listening to each other, innovation is not happening in the room, even though you're talking about innovation. So these practices really allowed leaders to take on less of the effort themselves. Once you have purpose and meaning, once you're able to cleanly hold up the mirror to reality, do it in a way that is calm and assured for people, and intervene in the moment so people can really get what the change is all about, change will flow much more rapidly. But in that second round of research, what I was noticing, and my colleagues with me, was that the inner state of the leader felt different. The leaders who could do that kind of change also had a sort of composure or a presence that was really intriguing.
To say, actually, this disturbance will help us. We're now getting in touch with the deep feelings that are around in the organisation, in the system, and they are very real, and it would be foolish to ignore them. But also, the disturbance is a necessary part of the change process. It could actually be the affirmation that we are on the right track.
I think even just having the awareness of when I was getting frustrated, and taking a step back from it and recognizing, to your point, that this is just giving me more data on how to navigate and where we might need to adjust the path somewhat.
And those two factors alone, the inner state and how you do change the external practices, accounted for over half the reason why big change either succeeds or fails. So that's quite a big swing factor. The third layer up the change vitality cone, which is change approaches. And that is really where I started my whole mission to investigate how to lead change well. Because there are many, many different ways of doing change. Some change, or some leaders assume that change can be quite simple and straightforward and linear, and you have a program management approach. You need to go from A to B, and then how do you get between there? But sometimes people assume, well, actually, it's a bit more complex like that. It's a bit messy. It's a bit more emergent. It's not necessarily going to be that predictable or planned. So we have 4 different ways of looking at how to approach change. And particularly, we look at the role of emergent change in today's world. How can you approach change in a way that is more organic, that has more of an ongoing nature to it? And really, all the leader needs to do is give up control and command, and instead have a very loose intention for the change, and then prescribe a few sort of hard rules, the boundary conditions within which people can innovate, and then let the change flow. And in so many times now, in worlds where you never quite know what the answer is going to be, because after every 3 months you might need to do something else, having a more step-by-step emergent approach to change makes sense. And it not only makes sense, our research shows that in change where you're trying to get rapid change that is sustaining, it is the most successful approach to change, particularly if you're wanting to work at pace. But it is a bit scary because leaders have to give up control, particularly over the outcomes. So change approaches, your choice of how you approach change, how you design your implementation, is really fateful.
You've managed to change the conversation, and it's gone from being very linear to very, how do we involve people in the design? How do we really understand what we're trying to solve for? What's our different roles in this? What would be our design principles going into it? How do we reflect what we want to be? All those things are just now very, very natural.
I mean, that was the other thing I was going to say, which I found very helpful about, and think the thing probably I've learned more than anything else. I don't always get the jargon right, so I never remember it. But this whole system approach, to use, if you'll forgive me, to use more kind of overt Christian language, there's wisdom in the body, and that no one part of the body can say to another part, we don't need you.
One of the things that I take from the work that we've done with you and others is that you should use the change journey to role model the change that you want to be. And that was really clear in my mind as a principle, the design principle going into this. You know, what's the outcome we want, and how do we role model that in what we're going to do?
And I think you were a real Sherpa. You know how Sherpas take people on dangerous journeys. So you don't say, you don't lead the way, you gently guide the organisation to a different place. But it might well be that you have to go over a ravine that people don't want to go over. So the final part of the Change Vitality Cone, and I'm really excited about the research we've done this year, is the top slice, what we call the ordering forces. The ordering forces are really the state of the system, not the state of yourself, but the state of the system. Because there are very complex human dynamics in change, and sometimes you might feel that there's something in the atmosphere, people are getting agitated, or there's resistance, things aren't flowing well, decisions aren't being taken. What's really going on here? Or people are dwelling too much in the past, or they're trying to get to the future and ignoring or not respecting what's gone on in the past. So these ordering forces of time, how a leader can act as a custodian over time, past, present, future, belonging. How do you know what to include and who to include within a change effort so that people feel, this is my place, I feel secure, this matters to me, and other people matter to me too. And then place, the ordering force of place. I might feel I belong here, even if it's a restructuring, which can of course threaten belonging. Do I know where can I best lead? How does my job relate to the purpose? How does my job relate to other people in the system around me too? So if you haven't really paid attention to formal and informal hierarchies in place, things will feel a bit wobbly and people won't be able to give of their best in a change effort. And very finally, we work with the ordering force of exchange. That is all about the give and the get in any change process. I mean, the whole universe is a system of exchange. There's reciprocity in life, in the living world, and there is in human systems too, be that a family, be that a team, be that a whole institution or society. And very often change will come with a price and not just a prize. So change costs. Something might have to be given up. Your identity, a way of doing things, reconfiguring teams. As well as a prize, what will you gain in this change? And what we found is that, and I have found this too myself, it's sometimes the natural tendency is to overestimate the prize. If we do this well, this is what we'll gain. And we underestimate the cost. So the ordering force of exchange is all about making visible as a change leader, not just the benefits or who's going to benefit, but who's going to have to pay the price, or what is the price we're going to have to pay. And you can never have a complete balance of the give and the get and who's owed and price and prize. But just by mapping it and naming it, the system seems to relax because the tensions are seen, they're made visible. So these deep ordering forces really was so powerfully demonstrated this year in our latest round of research. All 4 of these ordering forces are positively correlated to change success.
Yeah, it's something about when you're trying to move forward and it's really sticky or intractable, to move backwards first, or to always go back to foundational story, founders, that would just come before trying to move forwards. And there's something in that backwards movement, again, creates the capacity to look forwards.
We have a great sense of the continuity of the ministry that we've received and we're part of. So I'm the 98th Archbishop of York. And it's good to have that perspective that there were 97 people in this role before me, and probably will be another 97 after me. I find that incredibly helpful to put myself in a greater perspective. It saves me from the tyranny of the now and the tyranny of the urgent, and I think enables me to focus on what's important, and also to recognise that actually the challenges that I'm facing are so similar to the challenges that my predecessors faced.
Recognition of the need to do something different for our people, but recognizing that I had to be aware of, for partners in the firm in particular, which were a key group to kind of help enable this change, what their reference was, what history they had, grown up in, how they felt about it, how, where was I positioning myself.
So your own inner state, how you are in command of your mental and emotional response to experience, what do you need to do as a change leader to show up well, to lead to effective change, how you approach change approaches, and then how do you pay attention to the system around you. These 4 factors make up change vitality. It's a holistic approach to change. Everything is interconnected in our framework as well. So, in order to get more effortless change, it does require a bit of effort, but we have found that by paying attention to these 4 factors, you do get more chances of successful change. I used to work at Pepsi, and it was like the successful ingredients that go into a great can of Pepsi. This Change Vitality Cone, we hope, has the recipe, in a sense, or the signposts for you on how to lead change well.